Our final chapter focuses on a very specific form of communication. Communication in professional contexts and with colleagues and employers. It's not that the skills we've already explored do not apply. They do. It's rather that the workplace requires additional rules of etiquette and formality that take extra consideration. At work, good communication is not just something nice to have so that people get along. Communication is non-negotiable. No matter what your role is or what work you're doing that work will depend, at some point, on how well you can share your own message and hear the messages of others. All the same considerations apply when thinking about verbal and nonverbal communication, but in the workplace, we have to consider the enormous role that both written and electronic communication plays, too. Workplace communication etiquette. Etiquette sounds like a horribly old-fashioned word, but the truth is, as social beings, we're always following some sort of etiquette, whether we're aware of it or not. A simple definition says that etiquette is the customary code of polite behavior in society or among members of a particular profession or group. When talking to friends, family, or romantic partners, customary codes and politeness are still important, but it's in the workplace where communication is really stripped down to its most formal, impersonal, and rule-bound. Therefore, what makes you a good communicator at home or with friends will not necessarily make you a good communicator at work. When thinking about workplace communication, there are three things to consider: the goal of communication, the context of our communication, the way we communicate that content, also known as the medium. If you can correctly identify each of these three, you can more consciously communicate your message and hear other people's. If you're in a new workplace or are trying to deal with potential conflict or misunderstanding, it's worth slowing everything down and being very deliberate in the way you approach your communication. i.e., don't expect to automatically know how to do the right thing. Step 1. Let your goal decide your medium. It sounds unbelievable, but many people launch into an attempt at communication without actually knowing what they're trying to achieve or why. They may correctly perceive that there's a misunderstanding, or know that some kind of connection needs to be made, but things are not defined any more clearly than that. Have you ever received a rambling email filled with all sorts of miscellany from a colleague and reached the end of it thinking, "What was the point of all that?" You were probably on the receiving end of someone who had not clarified their purpose and goal before attempting to communicate. Nevertheless, their lack of clarity doesn't have to become your lack of clarity. You need to understand your reason for communicating. Let's say, for example, that you are requesting that a completed report be revisited since there are serious errors that now make the report unusable. You think you should get in touch with the team who drafted the report, but first you pause and think, what exactly are you trying to achieve? By asking that question, you take those actions, and only those actions that will help you achieve that goal, and cut down on the possibility of rambling, confusion, or misunderstanding. You decide that your goal is to draw attention to the errors and to thank the team, but politely request that they recompile it by a certain date so that you can use it as planned. Once you've identified this goal, you can allow it to inform your choice of medium, i.e., via which channel you're going to communicate through. In this case, you decide that a properly written email sent to all members of the team will do the job. If your goal was simply to keep someone updated about a deadline or answer a quick question, a text message might have worked, as could literally popping your head into their office and telling them in passing. A more serious topic may warrant meeting in person with enough time to prepare beforehand. Here are a few more questions that may help you fine-tune the kind of message you're going to send. Is there any urgency, or is the issue time-sensitive in any way? Will the information be sensitive or confidential? How many people need to receive this message? Do you require a response to this message or not? If so, what kind? Is your goal with this communication more general or more specific? What is the relationship between you and the receiver? Are they hierarchically higher or lower than you, or are they a peer? What exactly is the nature of your role regarding them, and what is the context of that relationship? In answering these questions and giving it some thought, you decide that you need to act quickly if you want to get your report redone. The information needs to go to 5 people in particular, but not to anyone else, as the material is confidential. You want to communicate very specific changes you wish to make, and need to know that they've received and understood these details, and that they can comply within the time frame. As you can see, you already have the framework of an effective message coming together. Step 2. Factor in your company's unique communication culture. You've identified the goal and the medium, but there may still be very specific ways of doing things that are unique to your company. Etiquette rules are general and exist to ease these interactions, but you will also need to carefully consider your audience and the special rules they follow beyond normal etiquette. If you work in a relaxed setting where management makes a point of not interfering with people's work-life balance, it's probably a bad idea to send a demanding email at 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. Likewise, if management tends to maintain a very formal, structured work atmosphere, then you'll need to be mindful of following protocols about copying the right people in emails or keeping the correct records and minutes of meetings, no matter how small or brief. Here, an eye to the kind of rhetoric you're using will be useful too. Don't assume that there's no place for pathos in formal workplaces. An appeal to company loyalty, striving for excellence, or maintaining high standards as a point of pride is, in fact, an appeal to the emotions. Likewise, don't assume that logos or ethos are always appropriate. Company culture might be such that you are expected to make your own claims rather than appeal to the authority of some third party, or to focus on practical implementation rather than making a more academic presentation of the facts and figures as you would with logos. Perhaps the most crucial considering will be kairos, or appropriateness. Think carefully about when you will put forward your message and in what context. It may seem insignificant, but the time of year, month, day, or even minute can influence how well your message is received. The medium may also need to change depending on the best time of delivery. For example, you may wish to forego an email and wait until you can speak in person. In our example, if you imagine that you're in a medium-sized but relatively relaxed work environment, you might send a properly worded but not overly formal email. Knowing your company's business, you understand that people value directness, honesty, and sincerity. And knowing the 5 people on the team, you approach the message simply and clearly, highlighting the mistake, but in a friendly and non-confrontational way, and politely asking for their help, rather than demanding or formally requesting their compliance. Step 3. Watch your tone. This is the step where we take into account all the ordinary rules of communication we've already explored. Is your tone too aggressive or passive-aggressive? Are there any assumptions, premature judgments, or inflexible attitudes that are getting in the way of meeting the goal? Ironically, in professional communication, it is more important than ever to be emotionally aware and able to manage and harness emotions rather than letting them dominate or derail. In our example, you need to be aware of the fact that the people who have compiled the report may react defensively if they feel they're being attacked or unfairly criticized. You may also notice your own feelings of awkwardness, annoyance, or guilt. None of these are a problem, however, if they're properly acknowledged, harnessed, and managed. For example, you could bring awareness to this emotional reality, but control it and steer it to your own ends. I realize this is a little awkward, and I wasn't entirely sure how to broach the topic with you, but the references section on this report will need to be redone entirely. The rest of the report was extremely helpful. In addition, I'm glad that we caught this error now, and the report has definitely given us the opportunity to slow down and rethink a few faulty assumptions we've been making. It is a myth that professional workplace communication needs to be emotion-free. Emotion has a place in every area of human life, and always will. It's just that in the workplace, we're more deliberate about how that emotion plays out in the way we meet our goals. The above response acknowledges emotions without making them the sole determiner of behavior. Still, plenty of conflicts occur purely based on misunderstandings of tone. If you're unsure about how your email is coming across, get a colleague to read it and give you feedback. No matter the message, goal, or context, favor clarity and simplicity. The following checklist can help you stay on track. Is your message respectful? You don't have to agree, but are you conveying basic tact and courtesy to the other person's perspective? Is your message focused exclusively on meeting your goal? Have you avoided expressing negativity without suggesting any solution? Is your message professionally neutral, i.e., have you removed any personal opinions that could be divisive, offensive, or awkward? Have you taken care with the formatting details? This means proofreading text, enunciating clearly when you speak, and learning the appropriate titles for people or the right way to pronounce certain terms. The 7 C's of effective workplace communication. Granted, you'll not always have the opportunity to sit and carefully pre-plan all your communication. Still, over time, with constant awareness of why you are communicating, what you are communicating, and how, not to mention to whom, you will gradually start to appreciate communication as a brilliant tool you can use to further your own ends. The 7 C's are a useful set of principles that you can use to guide you as you improve your workplace communication skills. No, this doesn't mean you'll never be misunderstood or that people will always be cooperative. That's their part of the communication process, right? But it does make it far, far more likely. Clarity. Before you can hope to have the other person understand what you're saying, you need to have that clarity for yourself. Make sure to confirm that the other person has received the message by asking clarifying questions, or even get them to paraphrase what they've heard you say. At the end of communication, both of you should feel that there are no uncertainties in the message that has been shared from either side. Use simple language. Being formal and professional doesn't mean you have to use clunky, vague vocabulary. Say use instead of utilize. Business jargon cannot be only annoying, but also can muddy your meaning. Don't say close of play, for example, when what you really mean is 5 p.m. today. While idioms and metaphors can help with more emotion-centered language, avoid it when you're trying to be clear. It might be helpful to literally put your goal out there. I'd like to get the complete and updated report done by 5 p.m. today. Conciseness. Getting your point across without any unnecessary fluff. Softening, hedging language, sort of, if you know what I mean, maybe, kind of, can not only come across as unconfident and incompetent, it can also confuse your message. The more you say, the more there is to misunderstand. Go back over your message and see if you can extract the essence and get rid of the rest. Concrete. This means to be backed up by facts, or else real, solid, actual, and specific. Basically, don't be vague. It's better to say, the first 5 references were done incorrectly than, the report could have used a little more polish. Correct. This refers both to the rules of language, grammar, spelling, syntax, but also to the rules of whatever format you're using. This is especially important if you're making an appeal to logos or want to convey a sense of your own authority and trustworthiness. Small inaccuracies can distract, at best, and completely undermine the message at worst. So, in our example, double and triple check that you are in fact correct about the errors you found in the report. Consideration. You know what your goal is, but what is theirs? Politeness is a minimum, but apply all the same skills of listening and validation we've already covered to acknowledge and respect the other person's perspective. What is their communication style? What are they struggling with? And how can you make them feel heard and seen while at the same time getting them to understand you? Completeness. This is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You want to leave every conversation feeling as though what needed to be said has fully been said. An important detail is to make sure that you're ending by identifying next steps. What do you expect the other person to do? What will you do? Does everybody know what to expect of the other party? And how and by when? It's a good idea to end every interaction with a recap and a call to action, i.e., summarize what happens next. Courtesy. There is never, ever a need to be rude, confrontational, or aggressive. Even in disagreement or misunderstanding, we can conduct ourselves with civility and respect. In fact, seeking to connect with others becomes more important as confusion or negative feelings arise, not less. Courtesy is just what empathy and compassion look like in a professional workplace. In our example, courtesy is simply being polite enough to thank people for the report they've already compiled, finding a few words of positive feedback, and signing off the email with warmth and friendliness. It's very simple, really. Thank people for everything, their time, their attention, their contribution. Say please when you can, and make space for people to respond without interruption, rushing, or judgment. Summary.